Let's say you want to focus more on results in your organisation or team. How can you embed this into the culture?
Look, there are 4 ways. You need to value a results-focused culture, know how to change culture, be a results-focused leader, and finally use metrics to drive results.
We know that organisations with a results-focused culture outperform others.
Well, that's because they have an emphasis on the outputs, what is achieved rather than the work that they do.
Well, let's discuss what the benefits are of this kind of culture.
Well, these organisations tend to be more strategic. People think more about what the team should be achieving, and so they tend to be more customer-centric. The flip side, of course, is that they are less concerned with internal procedures and, in fact, regularly review them to see, what can be changed or improved to add more value. So these organisations are much more dynamic.
So they'd be much more flexible about working arrangements, for example.
Yeah, staff like working in a results-focused culture because they get more freedom, more responsibility and opportunities for growth. And less time is needed supervising them because they have clear objectives to achieve. So as a result, the level of engagement is much higher. And this, of course, leads to better staff retention.
This way of working could also mean that the organisation can respond faster when there are sudden changes in the marketplace.
That's right. Look, being results-focused has benefits for staff, their leaders, and the bottom line.
To change any culture, you really need to understand the mix of factors that influence how people act or perform at work.
Yes, culture is very important to a company's success, but very hard to get right. In fact, there was a recent survey of CEOs done by Deloitte, and they found that 82% believed corporate culture was a potential competitive advantage, but only 19% believed they'd got the culture right in their organisations.
So that explains why there are so many attempts made to change culture.
That's right, but it's challenging because, for example, people resist change.
Let's explore the key elements of creating a strong, unified culture that everybody buys into.
If you want to change a culture, you need to pay attention to each of 3 factors. The first is what people say about the organisation. It's the story that is told. Now, you can't go past, say, an Apple or a Disney corporation for examples of really strong cultures built on compelling narratives. Second, there are the mindsets, the values and attitudes, what people believe. And thirdly, and this is the most important factor, there are the behaviours and role models, what people actually do.
How would you describe the difference between leadership and management?
Leadership is about vision, inspiration and emotion, while management is about setting up and monitoring procedures like, creating role definitions and measurement systems. Now, both are important, but when creating a results-focused culture, you need to start with leadership and only then follow up with management to lock in the changes.
I believe that leaders need to communicate a compelling case for why we need the change and what's necessary and what it's going to look like.
And the best way to do this is through storytelling. So, for example, Eve, I remember many years ago now, as a producer of Australian training videos, you painted a vivid new picture of being a global player and capturing markets, including the United States. I can remember being very excited about that, and so was everyone else. So It's about having a powerful narrative, a story that inspires people at all levels to get on board. Painting a detailed picture of how your customers will experience you, describing what success will look like, but making it meaningful in terms that people will understand.
What then?
A leader needs to also communicate the values and attitudes required in the new culture. And a great way to do that is by defining your purpose.
Meaning?
Well, it's what you are trying to create that sort of is beyond money. It identifies who the organisation is there to serve, why it exists, what contributions it is making to broader society.
I guess another way to communicate your values and attitudes is through a statement of guiding principles, like getting it right the first time.
Totally. Look, finally, it's critical that everyone behave in a way that is consistent with the new direction. And most important of all, leaders have to role model those behaviours. So they have to, for example, demonstrate the same willingness to be flexible as they expect their people to be.
Peter, what are the management tasks necessary to ensure a results-focused culture?
Well, there's a whole range, but let me give you two examples. First, you may want to review your hiring practices and focus less on the skills and knowledge you are after and more on what's to be achieved. And this will help promote diversity. Another way is to set specific results-focused goals and use them to regularly review performance. This encourages ownership and pride and really helps to cement the desired change.
Let's talk about the role of measuring performance in creating a results-focused culture.
Well, if you don't measure, how are you going to know if you have achieved the results you say you want? I know of a large college that says that it wants its students to have a life-changing experience. Well, okay, that's great. But how do you know if this has happened? How do you measure this? Well, guess what? They have a voluntary student survey, but only 10% of students complete it each year. The point is, they have a great vision, but they don't follow it up with any robust measurement.
So what are some tips on using metrics effectively?
Well, there's a process called OKR, which stands for Objectives and Key Results. And this should be used throughout the organisation, at the overall level, at the level of teams or units, and even down to the level of individuals.
And what does it involve?
Well, you start by setting objectives. So take my college example. They might set an objective to have highly satisfied students. So then the next question is how to measure student satisfaction. Now this means creating, say, an anonymous mandatory survey. Now they might aim for a minimum of 80% of students rating their experience as excellent. So the objective is what we are aiming for, and the key result is the actual measure.
And it's great to display and publicise the results. It can be very motivating. But how do you use this at the team level?
Exactly the same principle, but you drill down to objectives and metrics relevant to the team. So maybe it's how quickly inquiries are dealt with, or how good is the quality of service provided. You can use the same technique for individual people. Ideally, all objectives and key results should be updated every few months.
Are there any downsides to using metrics like this to drive results-focused performance?
Look, if they're not managed well, they can foster a kind of short-term mentality that can be damaging. They can also encourage staff to view their colleagues as rivals, and this can sort of harm the team cohesion. And in the worst case scenario, when corners are cut trying to achieve results, this can lead to unethical behaviour.
So, to avoid these problems, you really need to agree and share the objectives and the key results, review them regularly, and spot any undesirable behaviours so you can proactively intervene.
So, to ensure a results-focused culture, you need to value a results-focused culture. You need to know how to change a culture. You must be sure that you display leadership that focuses on results and make sure you use metrics to drive results.